Hi everybody, my name's Jon Waters. Um, Basically, when I left the hospital, I went to my house at the corner of Interurban and Viaduct. That was my grandfather's house at one point that sold it to my dad. I was raised there until I was 3 years old. I had one constant companion, which was Pete. He was an old Irish setter. He used to follow me around everywhere because there's apparently a lot of food cast off from my eating. So he always was around for, the extras that were left behind. When I was 3 years old, my parents, we moved on to Townsend Drive, and I started out at Prospect Lake School in kindergarten. I had a good number of people that were. It was a really good class. There was a few people that weren't, but that goes on without saying. I went to grade 1, 2, and 3 at Prospect Lake. Then for 4, 5, and 6, I came up to Beaver Lake. In grade 4, I was actually put into the grade 5 class. There was 5 or 6 of us that were put into the grade 5 class. And then grade 5, grade 6. Grade 7 for me was up at Royal Oak. Let's see. I wasn't very much of a sports person, that's for sure. But as we got to Royal Oak, there was a lot more people in our mix, and got to know a few people out there. I did 7 and 8 up at Royal Oak, and actually, when I was at Beaver Lake, grade 6 was the last year that they held it at Beaver Lake. So when we moved up, the grade 5s with us moved up into Royal Oak. And then in grade 9, mine was the first class to go from Royal Oak up to Claremont. So we were the first grade 9 class that went into Claremont. I finished out most of those years unscathed. In 1984, it was on January 30th that I was in the Claremont High School bus accident. And Mr. Goddard, I was sitting right beside Bruce. We were in the very first seat. Yeah. And, well, being in the very first seat and being awake all the time, I was pushing off the side of the bus when we hit the side of the mountain. Excuse me. I ended up pushing Bruce off into the aisle, just trying to get out of the way. When we hit the side of the mountain, I felt my arm break, and I remember going through the windshield, holding my arm. And my arm went through the low half of the windshield, and I saw everything right down across me. And next thing, when I woke up, there was a lot of chaos. We ended up going down to Courtney Comap's hospital. I was really lucky. One of the lifeguards from Peninsula pool happened to be on one of the other buses. She made a really wide sweep. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. She found me quite a ways from the bus. I'd gone up through the windshield and I tumbled. And I was in the ditch and went up over the snow and landed way off in the bushes. I don't know if anybody believes in out-of-body experiences or not, but I had one. I remember seeing the bus from a completely different view. I was looking down on the top of it and seeing everybody run around. And then I woke up. When I turned around 180 degrees, I was looking straight up through the front of the bus, which was a completely different scene. I remember being really cold, and I checked my jacket, my brand new ski jacket, which was gray, and it was completely soaked red. I said, well, that's not good. And I lay back down, and then Anna Marie came into my life. She's the one that pulled my scalp from underneath the back of my head all the way up front and put it back on, held on to it. She stayed with me for the ambulance ride down to Comox, and it was total chaos in the hospital. Every single bed was used, and by the time they got me down to the end of the room, they asked the one patient there to be removed so they could start working on me. They started working on me, and a few things didn't go well, to say the least, but there was so much chaos. Anna stayed with me, and she held my hand. And then the doctors tried to straighten out my leg. And it took a couple people, plus the doctor, trying to release my hand to let go, because I was hurting her. But that's the way it was. And I went in and out of consciousness quite a few times. Like I said, there was a lot of chaos. There was a few strange things that happened that day. One was they put me on a gurney and they had me out front of the hospital, and a doctor came out and said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're readying him for transport." He says, "He's not stable. Get him inside." So my first 4 or 5 days was in the hospital up there. Really strange. The second to last night I was there, my arm was really itchy. so I was itching it, and I pulled all the tubes out of my arm. And I remember looking out through the door and seeing the nurse running in at an angle like that. And they thought I'd gone. But it was just a big mess to clean up. Then when I was ready for transfer finally, 4 or 5 days later, I was taken down to the Vic General. I was one of the, I don't want to say first people in there, but that was the same year they opened up. I spent an extra month in the hospital, had many surgeries. From the accident, I had a broken hand, broken wrist, broken arm. I had 136 stitches in my face. My left shoulder was dislocated. Various other cracks and so on. My hip girdle was broken. Pubis bones were broken. My left leg were a really low tibia-fibia compound fracture, and my ankle was shattered, which is really weird because the shoe that was on my left foot was in perfect condition, and that was the most destroyed foot. And I had a cut that went from all the way across the bottom, right to the bone, up and around to the top. So that one doesn't feel very much anymore. My right leg was compound fracture. Went through every single side of my leg, and it took 8 operations to save my leg, which is really good because the night of the accident they phoned my dad, and they said they wanted permission. Got off my right leg below the knee. My dad said no. And his next call was to our family doctor. He said, "Who's the best technical man for surgery?" And they recommended Dr. Wall. So once I got back down into Victoria, he started surgeries on my leg. The last surgery he did was the 8th one. He put a 6-inch steel plate and 9 screws, shaved the top of my hip off, took marrow, took bone, made a slurry, packed it around everything. And they said, lucky it took, because the 9th operation would be the first one the doctors wanted to do. After that, there was skin grafts and lots of casts. A month later, just over a month, I finally got out of the hospital because I was losing so much weight. I was 6'2" and 115 pounds. And they said, "What can we do to get you to start packing weight on?" I said, "Send me home. My mom's cooking, we'll do it." So I went home. One of the things my dad asked me while I was in the hospital was, what do you want when you get home? And before the accident, I'd bought all the stuff for my waterbed. And him and I were supposed to work on it. But I wasn't able to. But when I got home, my waterbed was waiting for me. And had a trapeze set up in the middle of the room so I could move from my wheelchair to my bed and stuff. Really lucky. The halls in the house are 6 feet wide, so I didn't have too much of a problem with the wheelchair and stuff like that. I was in a wheelchair for about 6 months, give or take, a couple of days. Then I was on crutches after that. After I'd gotten out of the hospital, a month or so later, I went back to school. And in the wheelchair, my dad had a box made up to fit onto my wheelchair. And one of the classes I was taking was automotive. And I've had a lifelong like for the Austin Mini. And so I had one of my Austin Mini engines out, and we put the block in the back of my wheelchair, and I'd go off to class with that. It was kind of funny. Then that summer, I was still on crutches. I went to visit my friend in Ardrossan. He had just moved the year before. And so I went out and saw him. I was there for 2 weeks, still on crutches. Was involved in another automotive accident, and it wasn't my buddy's fault. It was some other idiot's fault. But I've always worn a seatbelt, and that time I was really lucky because all of the damage was done on the right-hand side of the car. The whole hood was folded flat in front of me. I re-broke my wrist because I punched the windshield. My buddy twisted the steering wheel around, and his sister was sitting in the middle and back, and she came up along in between the seats, and she got caught between the seats before she went out. So, also at that time, my buddy had a Honda ATC, and I learned how to ride that for 2 weeks, and that was a lot of fun. Having to shift with my casts and everything else. So, but after that, came back, and I'd missed 3 classes, basically, because of the accident. I actually had a spare for last semester. And they came to me and said, well, you're short 3 classes for your grade 12, and you're going to have to come back and take the 3 classes. I said, okay, that's fine. I'll take 2 in one semester, 1 in the other. They said, no, you can't do that. And as it was, so they said that I had to come back and I could only have 1 spare in 1 semester. And at that point I said, you've already said I graduated, right? And they said, yeah. And I said, I'll come back. I'll do 3 courses in my first semester, 3 courses in my second semester, and that way I have a spare each semester. And they finally capitulated. So I went back. That year was rather contentious for me. It was a very, very difficult year. The 2 people that had died in the accident, Adam Kerr, he had been a friend since kindergarten. And Scott Branson had been a friend of mine for 3 or 4 years. And I talked to Adam earlier that day. before the accident. We'd always been friends. We hadn't been super close friends. He was more athletic than I was, and all that sort of stuff. But he walked past me and says, "Hey, John, break a leg today." I said, "Break a leg? I've never broken anything in my life." He said, "Neither have I." He said, "Have a good day on the slopes." Other than him getting on the bus to go where he was sitting at the back, that was my last interaction with him. After I finished with second year of grade 12, I ended up with 3 credits over, and I applied to, well, I had to change my plans because I'd always wanted to be a chef. And I'd been collecting knives and cookbooks and everything over the years. And because of the accident, I wasn't going to be able to follow that path. So I went in for hotel restaurant management. It was a 2-year course. We started with 44 people in our class, first semester, first year. By the time we got around to second semester, second year, there was 13 of us left. Big attrition in that class. And out of the 13 of us that were left, I can say that I was 1 out of 11 people that passed. I had done quite a bit of work with Okanagan Springs during my college years. That was the first year they were coming to the island. And I basically did all of the tastings from Duncan down through to the end of the peninsula for the in-store liquor store beer tastings. And that's what I wrote my final exam on. And I laid everything out, how to do it and so on. I got an A out of that one because nobody had ever done that before. It was just new. So nobody knew how to do in-store tastings. So that helped, got that finished. Then we were working a gala dinner up at Camosun College. And there were a lot of very high ups, I guess you could say, that were at the gala dinner. And one of them happened to be the general manager of the Union Club of British Columbia. And I happened to be serving him, which was kind of, I don't know, lucky on my part, I guess. And he said, "When you finish here, come and see me, you got a job." So the maitre d' was not happy with me because I was hired over top of him. The general manager said, "You're going to give him a job." So he did a lot of things to make life difficult for a lot of people. And just an example, one night he cut back on staff, and there was myself and another waiter. We each had 13 tables inside the restaurant, and then we had a group of 45, which was a dinner, sit-down dinner, 5-course meal, all that sort of stuff. And we pulled it off, me and the other waiter. We got everything done. Then the pressure kind of started to come off. shall we say. And so one evening, we were having a beer tasting at the Union Club. And I had put my name in for representative for Okanagan Spring Brewing Company. And one of the owners said to me, point blank, he says, "You don't have enough background experience in doing this," and stuff like this. And I said, "Really?" I explained to him that I'd run all the tastings and stuff, but he had already made his mind up. So I didn't get that job. But during the beer tasting evening, the guy that he hired didn't know anything about beer, didn't know anything about the products, anything else. And so people were asking him questions, and he didn't know. So I told him, "Go study your pamphlets and stuff like that, and I'll take over the booth." "Oh, okay, sure, whatever." So some of the next customers through were the general manager and owner of Spinnaker's Brew Pub. Paul Hadfield Penny was the manager at the time. And they started asking me questions about all the beer and so on. And I answered all of them. It was just second nature to me at that point. And they said, "Bring down a resume. We want you to work for us." And I told them to check their box because there was already half a dozen of my resumes in there. So I started working for Spinnaker's at the same time. I carried off both jobs and was working, sometimes 16 hours a day. Excuse me. But then one night coming out of the Union Club, I was walking down some concrete steps in my leather-soled shoes. I slipped and went off the edge of the stairs and tore all the ligaments in my right leg. So there was some time for healing and everything else. But when I was ready to come back, both places wanted me back. So I went back and I did both jobs for another 8 months, maybe a year. Then I decided to go with Spinnaker's. When I stopped there, or when I was there, I started on the bottom of the floor. Worked my way up. Bartender, server, waiter, everything. And then I was manager on duty quite often as well. 94, the Commonwealth Games. That was probably one of the busiest times at Spinnaker's during those years. And yeah, I ended up doing that. At about the 10th year or so at Spinnaker's, the upstairs bartending job came open. And I went from manager on duty to running an upstairs bar for about 10 years. But at that time, I also took on doing repairs and maintenance for the pub, looking after all the older furniture and stuff like that. Running telephone lines between the main building and all of the bed and breakfasts that we had. I'd done wiring, plumbing, computer system wiring throughout the main Spinnaker's, finding little creases and crevices to push stuff up so we could operate off both the floors. and restoring a lot of the old furniture. I had, they called it John's Dungeon, where I did all the work on tables, chairs, everything else. When we went to pub and restaurant, when I started there, it was just pub on the main floor. Upstairs was all office space. Then we moved the pub to upstairs. There was a lot of construction going on, and Paul, he wanted everybody to hang out and work, so we did. And at about the 10-year mark, well, sorry, in the early 2000s, once again, I was lucky enough to be in another car accident where I was T-boned, and that kind of really screwed me up. I ended up with a cracked vertebrae in my back and stuff. But that led through from 2000s into 2006 was when I heard that I was going to be a father. And in 2007, on Valentine's Day, my daughter, Cameron Venus Waters, was born. And a year later, I was having problems with my body and stuff like that. So my partner wanted to go back to school. So I left the pub after 19.95 years, basically, 20 years. And went home and looked after my daughter. I became part of the PAC at the school. I started some PAC programs, and one of them was PAC Pops, because all the mothers were involved, and there was a lot of fathers that were saying, how can we get involved? So I started a PAC Pops program, and made up shirts, big pink shirts, for all the PAC Pops, footprints made out of fists and finger things, you know. The PAC Pops, we looked after doing the barbecues for the end of the year. We did the barbecues down in Goldstream during the salmon return, all their beach days, stuff like that. I had arranged, I found a grill over in Vancouver that was available, and one of the PAC parents was coming back through, and so they ended up picking that up, and that became the school barbecue. And like I say, the fathers, myself included, we did all the lunches and so on their little expeditions out from the school and stuff. I was involved with the PAC through to my daughter's last year in Prospect. And then when she moved up to Royal Oak, because there's no Beaver Lake School anymore, I kind of backed off on that. Raising my daughter, well, took her to all the libraries, to the park programs, swimming, all that sort of stuff. It's a fantastic time to spend with my daughter. I'm really glad I got a chance to do that. She just graduated this last year. She's very artsy. I went to her awards ceremony this last year, and she got 4 scholarships and 2 bursaries. So she's up at UVic now. She's got all her classes, and she's just a brilliant kid. She's a very good visual artist, and her drawing technique and stuff is amazing. It's probably one of the best things that I ever did, I think. What do I do nowadays? Do a little bit of gardening here and there, stuff like that. Not much more. I don't know where you guys want to end, or if you want questions, sure, yeah.
Any questions from the board?
I just got a comment to make. So John, because you were so badly injured, you didn't know what was going on back at school.
No, I didn't. No.
That, I remember the day that it happened. I remember exactly where I was standing. And when I heard on the news, there'd been a bus crash. Students from Claremont on a ski trip. Our 2 kids were not on that trip because we couldn't afford it. So who knows what would have happened if they were involved.
Small blessings.
But I'm interested if you were involved with the PAC because I was the PAC president for Claremont.
Oh, okay.
And the accident occurred.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And parents went up to the school to support the parents who were waiting, not knowing who was on what bus.
Yeah. There was quite a bit.
It was a long time before people knew who was injured and who was safe at home.
Yeah, there was 3 schools up at Mount Washington that day. Parkland's, I believe it was Stellies, and Claremont. And like you say, when it first came out, I learned a lot of this stuff after that. They weren't even sure what school at one point, where the students were, but all the parents from all 3 schools were on pins and needles. I had mentioned my friend Adam. I'd known him since kindergarten. Scott Branson I'd known since his year, I think it was 2 or 3 years, not 100% sure, 2 or 3 years I'd known him. And one of the things that came out about the accident was they had a list of people that shouldn't be here. And a friend of mine's from a long ways back as well was Darlene Hunter. And her and I were on the very top of the list. They said we shouldn't have made it. Darlene ended up having the top 4 vertebrae in her neck crushed. She got taken over to Vancouver. She ended up with a halo device where they screwed into her skull in 4 spots, and it was all supported off of her shoulders and stuff like that.
And Brian Adams went to see her.
Oh, I did not know that. Nobody came to see me.
I have a bit more information for you, which I will just learn myself.
Okay.
Jeanette's partner, Sean Payne,
Yes.
he also suffered, but in a different way. He gave up his seat so you could be there. So he feels guilty for what you went through because he was supposed to be in that seat. And there was an exchange change, I understand, because someone wanted to sit their buddies, and that's why the move was made. But I just learned that just about a month ago. So he suffers in a different way. He's very sorry for your pain.
A lot of people have suffered.
We knew
Over
14
the-
kids on that bus.
Yeah. Well, there was, the bus was overloaded. They had about 66 people on the bus. And 20 of those people were standing in the aisle. There was, the bus itself was supposed to have 44 people on it, but they had 64 people on it. My sister got on the bus, and her and I got into an argument, and she ended up leaving the bus. Just one of those things, I guess. Anybody else? Anything else? Yes.
My son was also on the bus. He was third back next to the mountain. He must have gone over you, and I can't talk. Too many memories.
Yeah, he wouldn't have gone over top of me. I was the first one out the windshield, and I ended up so far down the road they were going to charge me with leaving the scene of the accident. That's one of the only jokes I can really tell about that whole day. And I mean, a lot of people suffered that day, and
How many buses were there?
how many buses were there? Well, yeah, I think there was 2 from Claremont.
Claremont, was your sister got on the other bus?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's 1 or so from Parklands and 1 or so from Stellies as well.
And were all the buses involved in the accident or just yours?
Just mine. When I was, during the summer before the accident, I'd been in Victoria Aqua Ski Club all of my life. And that year, at 17, I wasn't a big sports guy, but I liked to water ski. And I was just getting into water ski jumping. And of all the times I went over the top of the jump, I only screwed up once, and I came off the jump upside down, way out of shape. It was a bad splash, shall we say. But when we went snow skiing that day, another friend of mine and I were like, let's see how many runs we can do today. And it's like, sure, sounds good. So we went up to the very top of the mountain, pointed our skis down, and we did that all day. A little bit of a strange story. Anna, who looked after me, when I was lying in the outside of the ditch there, I asked her how her day of skiing was. And she says, it was pretty good except for some, I'll tell you, guy ran over the back of my skis when I was in ski school. My buddy and I think it was our 3rd run down, we came up on a ski school. And they were cutting across, and the person that was leading the ski school saw us coming down, so he cut it short. And that put everybody right in the middle of us. And so I tucked up, and I was on one ski, and I went right across the back end of 2 skis. So apparently I was supposed to meet Anna that day. Glad I didn't ruin that chance. It was just one of those little strange little stories that came out of the whole thing.
Do you still keep in touch with all the students who were in the bus with?
No, not all of them. I see Bruce 1 or 2 times a year here at the sales and stuff like that. Darlene Hunter, I see her every once in a while. Anna Marie, the lady who looked after me. I was, we hung out quite a bit the last few years of her high school and so on, and like she was a year younger than me. And we had a really good friendship. And during her first wedding, I was one of the bridesmaids. It was really funny. And when she had 2 kids, I was Uncle Johnny until I started shaving my head. Then I was bald Uncle Johnny. And I'm glad to wear that pin, you know. Great kids. One of them is really high up in one of the boat building industries nowadays, and local industry. So, and yeah, it was just great to be an uncle without really having to be an uncle, I guess. Any more questions or?
My son Bruce, he was on the bus. And when the bus happened, he ended up in the stairwell of the bus,
Yeah.
and the scalpel got peeled back. And we heard about we didn't know about the accident. We went up to the school to pick him up after that. And I said, "Why are you up here?" I said, "We can't pick up Bruce. He's in the hospital." We knew nothing about the and he was unconscious for about 10 days.
Yeah.
And we went up to Graham to visit him, and he eventually, sometime later, my mother and I went up to see him one Sunday night, and he was awake, and he said, "Why am I here?" He knew nothing about that previous 10 days. Until his scalp back on, and he lost his memory. He went through, like you had to write a school again, they put him through a he had to go to a memory retention class to get his memory back. But he's,
Yeah.
Now works at the hospital in November.
Yeah, he's radiocardiogram. He does x-rays and stuff, doesn't he, nowadays?
I think that's where he got the interest in it from all that. When he happened to all together, he chose that line as a means of income.
Yeah, yeah. I was, like I say, I was sitting right beside Bruce, and I was awake. I saw what was coming during the inquest. I was on the stand, and they asked me, "How fast do you think you were going?" And I said 60 miles an hour. "Oh, you're just a kid. How do you know that?" Whatever. And then they called their expert up, and he said we were doing 59.5 miles an hour. And I don't know, just, you know, like I say, I've been involved in vehicles since I got my motorized go-kart when I was 8, bought my first car when I was 13. First legal car I had on the road. My parents said they'd buy half of a car for me, and so they spent $175, and I spent the other $175 and had a green Hornet wagon. That was my first car actually on the road. Since then I've been through Volvos, Minis, Morris Minors, Austin, Cambridge. One car I never thought I'd have. I had was spending time with my daughter and so on. I ended up with a Dodge Caravan. And recently I stepped out of Volvos because, they're not working right now. So, and nowadays, right now, within the last month, I got a Toyota Toyota Camry. Another car I never thought I'd ask, I'd ever own. Anybody?
I just was going to comment that Tom and Ennis Lightfoot were on that bus as well.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first and last time they ever got to speak. As far as I know.
Yeah. I've never been on the mountain again. Well, I shouldn't say that. My doctor said after the 8 operations, if he ever saw me on a ski hill, he was going to pull the metal out himself. So I never skied there, but probably 25 years ago, approximately. We happened to be up at the golf course, Courtney Comax. I can't remember what it's called. And I was with 7 other guys, and the second day, the foursome wanted to go out, and my foursome said, no, let's do something different. So we drove up Mount Washington, which is something that I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to do. And I felt really good because my buddy had a Volvo V70 wagon, all-wheel drive, and it handled roads no problem whatsoever, there and back. And there's a chalkboard up at the top of the mountain, or in the lodge. And I recorded some of my memories on that chalkboard. Needless to say, we got down off the mountain that time, no problem whatsoever. So, like I said, it was probably 25 years ago, approximately.
Driving so that there was a bunch of them that got together at the mountain.
Yeah,
I think it was it the 20th year or something?
could be. I didn't go.
And she was sitting right next to Adam and Cora.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand why I had a condo at Mount Washington for years, and that road was treacherous as hell. I don't understand going that speed with kids, overloaded. I mean, I know, the brakes went, but I mean, even then, why would you overload an exit? That was a very dangerous road.
Well, that was one thing that came out at the inquest. They recommended a whole pile of things, including seatbelts on buses for kids going up to things like that, which has never been,
No internet,
no, it's never come about, which was,
dangerous road.
yeah,
Always had been. I mean, they fixed it now, but in the 80s when we were there, it was,
oh yeah,
Well, I mean, we met someone coming around some of those curves, it was tight up there. I mean, they just pushed it through.
And Adam Kerr's dad was a lawyer, and Adam Kerr was going to drive his own vehicle up there. And his dad said, no, you do not stay on the bus.
yeah. And on our way up to the mountain, actually, the bus that we were on blew a front tire, and I was sitting right over top of the front tires, and that's where the tire hit right underneath me. So we ended up having to pull into this bus service station or whatever, and they put on a new wheel and everything else and sent us up the hill. And we had to stop at the bottom of the hill to get kids off of the one bus back onto our bus so we could go up the hill and stuff. So, I mean, it was a very uncool day. I have different words to explain it, but yeah, like I say, there was quite a bit of stuff that came out after the inquest, and I can't really say that any of the improvements that were suggested have ever happened.
John, one that did happen is from that
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, every time I've been out with any other kids, I've always had a list. So one small good thing did come out.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Well, good.
I always know who's.
Yeah, well, that was one thing is, they didn't know what bus it was, who was involved, anything like that.
Well, thank you for your speech. I wasn't directly involved, and it just brings so much to the surface when you hear of what went on and what happened with the students that were involved.
Yeah.
So thank you. It really
Yeah.